The Douglas Coleman Show is made possible with support from Seth David Radwell, a recent guest on the program and author of American Schism, How the Two Enlightenments Hold the Secret to Healing Our Nation, released this past July. As Publishers Weekly writes in its recent glowing book life review of American Schism, business executive Radwell's epic debut examines the historical influences that have led to what he sees as the collapse of politics in the United States. Seth Radwell makes the case that the current chasm between the American right and left can be traced back to the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and the basic tenets of liberty, equality, and reason. American Schism provides a historical perspective that can help us fight today's unreason with reason and bridge current-day divides. American Schism by Seth David Radwell is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. For more information, go to americanschismbook.com.
It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Kimberly Spencer. Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. How are you?
Oh, doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited for a really amazing conversation.
Well, I hope so. I hope I can live up to that. I'm looking at your bio, and I got to ask right off the bat, award-winning high-performance trauma-informed coach and trainer. You got to explain that because I have no idea what that is.
Okay, so I'll start with award-winning, since that's like the first part. So award-winning, when I won awards in the business coaching program of Bank, and where it's a modality where it helps use different types of personality to be able to better understand human buying behavior and influence skills. High performance coach is really the study of excellence. And basically I love, my job is transforming people's stories. And many of my clients come to me with a history of some sort of childhood trauma. I myself personally experienced childhood trauma as well. I grew up with an addict, so there were many situations growing up that were unpleasant and challenging that I've had to work through. And so in my study of trauma, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I like to make that very clear. So the difference between coaching and psychology is psychology will really dive into the why and exploring what are the feelings of that why, what are the feelings of the past of those experiences. And a coach is much more forward focused. So I have an awareness and an understanding and a deep knowledge base of how trauma affects the body on a physiological level. And in order to help someone achieve a peak performance, they have to be able to change their state, which their state is a combination of their energy, their attitude, their physiology, how they're carrying themselves. And if they're carrying themselves and speaking with, and carrying themselves is also in how they speak, how they use their voice, because our voice is a part of our bodies as well. And so if there are these pieces of trauma in their past or patterns that are coming up, what my education in that arena helps me to do is it helps me to recognize the pattern and then look at new ways to shift that pattern via the state and somatically through the body. Does that make sense?
Well, I followed most of it, yeah.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I transform people's stories from the inside out.
Okay. So let me...
I really want to get simplistic.
Let's get even more simplistic. If I'm coming to you, let's say something happened to me when I was a kid. Let's say I was abused. And I come to you and I'm not doing too well. What are you going to do for me?
Well, first of all, I would look at where do you want to go? What are the goals that you want to achieve? You're not doing well. And I would probably, if you were struggling with some sort of depression or anxiety that was coming from your childhood trauma, then I would refer you to a psychologist as well to work with you. I've worked with teams of doctors before. Some of my clients come to me and working with their doctors and their health coaches and their different coaches. So it's like a team effort. And so what I would do for you is first look at, where do you want to go? What are your goals that you want to achieve in the next 3, 6, 9, 10 months, 10 years? And is that behavior that you're currently exhibiting getting you to where you want to go? Because a lot of times the behavior that we're living, especially when there's been trauma in the past, is we're repeating cycles of behavior that we just survived with, but that's not really going to necessarily get us to where we want to go for achieving a goal. So we would look at and explore how to change the story of what happened so that we can move forward. How can we change the story of looking at how can we use the strategies that work for you for survival to move into those areas that you can thrive? And we would look at really, where do you want to go? What are the strategies you're using to get there? Are they effective strategies? And what is the story that you're telling yourself along the way? So if the story you're telling yourself is, I can't do that because I was abused, then that is a story that will keep you stuck. And it will be a very disempowering story, versus the story that if you reframed it and reworked it to where I can do that because I was abused, because now there are so many children that I need to stand up for through achieving XYZ, whatever goal it was that you wanted to achieve, that would allow me to contribute to more causes, or that would allow me to impact children's lives. So we would direct you toward what is the purpose, and is the strategy that you're telling yourself that you've got going on right now, your subconscious strategy, and the ones that you're actually putting into the place, which include your habits, your daily habits, is the story that you're telling yourself in alignment with this? And is the state that you are moving into, is the state that you're approaching your goals the state that's going to get you there? So if you're going for a really big goal, a state to be in that would actually move you toward your goal would be a state of courage. So feeling the courage to speak up, feeling the courage to take bold moves, having the courage to do that thing that you've been procrastinating on. A disempowering state would be a state of victimization, a state of apathy, of like, oh, well, I've always been this way, and so there's no way that I can change. So those are disempowering states that will go against the strategy and the story that you're telling yourself. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, actually. Now, is this part of your crownyourself.com company?
Yes.
That's what, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because what I'm creating with Crown Yourself is I want to create leaders, and I want to create a diversity of leaders who are able to hold a discussion of differing opinions, but who have mutual values of freedom, of ownership, of authenticity, of growth and contribution. So that is my goal, to create conscious leaders. And I've been able to do it in a multitude of different industries with amazing humans. I absolutely love my clients and the good work that they're bringing to the world.
So are your clients, do you do this one-on-one, or do you do seminars and groups, or do you go to companies? How do you do this?
I've done all those forms. So
okay.
I've done seminars and workshops, and don't really do many of those now anymore, except for in the online space. I do a lot of private. Most of my amazing clients are private clients. And then I do group programs. Like right now we're launching a group program, Communication Cleans, about how to really use podcasting as a tool to really own your story and stand out in your business, and also sell efficiently.
Using podcasting?
Using podcasts, yeah.
Give me an example of what somebody would do. I mean, aside from just advertising, because you would create your own podcast to create advertising?
Actually, it's appearing on other people's podcasts, because that's one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make.
Okay.
Yeah, is they build their own stage of their podcast, and the podcast is great, and they have their core listener group, which are probably already their existing customers and clients and their existing community, but they need to expand their community. And so by appearing on other people's podcasts and just like this, and having conversations and having powerful conversations, because the beautiful part is with sharing your story on any other person's podcast is that A, you and I are having a one-on-one conversation, and B, other listeners are hearing it. So It's a twofold approach of having a powerful, impactful one-on-one conversation and having the listener be able to be involved, so that if they hear my message or my story or my offers or what I have to share, or they connect with the values that I have, then they can come over and to my website or to my offer and jump in on that.
Okay.
And so I teach in this program how to do that effectively and in a way that's not like creepy and salesy and like, hold on, let me just pop on and just sell some stuff. Cause that's not in integrity with what I believe. I believe to show up with service first, always.
Well, I think there's a good way to do it if people get to know you. And if you come on a podcast and we talk like we're doing now, and then you slip in, a website or a link or some sort of a pitch about what you do. There's 2.4 million registered podcasts out there now, which is an insane amount of podcasts. So,
yeah, it's doubled in the past year.
Yeah. So it's really important to grab the listener's attention with your personal story rather than your advertisement for your business, because people will just tune that out.
Exactly, because then it's just coming at them as another pitch, and people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. And so it's cultivating and being authentic, because I can tell you when I hear new business owners, especially women, when they're starting out a business and they're trying to find their niche, and a lot of times they're starting a business and then they think that, I'll start a podcast to bring in people for that business. And as I'm talking to these new business owners, when I hear them say what their niche is and who they serve, I can already tell on it's not the words that are coming out of their mouth. It's just that the fact that it isn't embodied, and it isn't an embodied belief. So if I hear a woman say like, I help successful women achieve their full potential, do you hear the difference in that there's no grounding in a belief that they actually can produce those results, or that they're actually doing that? And that's more with service-based industries. But I see that, and if you're going on to shows and sharing your story, and you're sharing this belief, you're sharing this thing that you do, and you don't really believe that you do it expertly, and you don't believe that you do it well, like, people are going to feel that. They won't know why they won't want to buy your products and services, but they also, and why they want to tune you out, but they'll just tune you out. It's like my husband and I have this thing that we will stick with a TV show, even if it's gotten really bad. And I'll give you an example. I loved the show Black Lightning for the first 3 seasons. I thought it was great. And something shifted in the 4th season. Either the direction is off, or the writing is off. It lost a bit of its humor, and like the acting and the cuts are just funky. And like we were so my husband and I will watch a show we're like, we don't know exactly what is the problem, but we'll try to dissect it to find out what that thing is that made it different than when it was like really freaking good. And that's what I do as a coach too, is I'll see where someone else is successful and how they approach their success in that one area, let's say their relationships. And I'll look at all the strategies that they have going on, all the approaches that they approach maybe it's their primary romantic relationship. Ideally, it's their primary, their primary romantic relationship.
The primary
there's no
one.
Secondary,
Yeah.
There's no secondary romantic relationship unless your partner's cool with that. But if it's their romantic relationship, then what are the strategies that go into that? And then if they're struggling in some different area, how do we take those same subconscious success strategies that are so natural in that one form into their business or into their money or into their impact or into their relationships with their children or into their relationship with their bodies? And how do we use that to be able to get those same ways that they are successful in their relationship so that they can be successful in a different area? So that's what my husband and I do when we're watching a show that has kind of turned, and there's definitely like a clear lack of consistency with the quality and the impact and the way that the show is feeling. And so that watching that show, we've been able to deduce that it definitely seems like a producer thing, and possibly, and the writing is just off. And the beautiful thing is that that's what I hear when I hear a new business owner also speak into something that they don't necessarily believe in, or that they still have doubt around their capability, or they have doubt around their expertise, or they have imposter syndrome. You'll hear and see and feel that same sort of funkiness of like, I don't know why this show that is this human being is not registering or relating or connecting, but I don't know if that's something that I want to work with. So people won't know exactly, they won't be able to put their finger on it necessarily. And that's why the power of coaching is so powerful, because we can break it down to see like, okay, well, do you really believe that? Like one of my clients, I had to ask her because she kept on thinking that she had to do like correlate everything back to business. And she'd been a successful business owner. She'd been struggling with getting her really soul-fueled, purpose-based business off the ground. And she was like, I feel like I have to coach on business. And I said, I asked her, I said, well, what if just coaching on purpose was enough? I said, and she just really sat with that question because she wasn't interested. Coaching about business when she didn't feel successful in business is a poor strategy. Because if you're not feeling success and if you're not producing successful results in your business, then coaching on business is like the blind leading the blind. And it feels inauthentic and it feels out of integrity. And most of my clients, like one of their highest values is integrity. And so being able to be in integrity with their mission, if something's out of alignment, whether it's a business partner or whether it's their business's purpose or whether it's their marketing strategies, we'll look at those tweaks to see what is out of alignment or out of integrity with who they actually are.
It's very true. And you've got to love what you're doing. I think I can't stress enough how important that is, because I worked for 20 years in a job that paid very good money, but I could care less about what it was that I was doing. And it really eats at your soul.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. And it was interesting when I had an e-commerce business for about 2 years, and I was bought out by my business partner 3 weeks before I got married to my husband. And that was a challenging summer because in the summer that I was supposed to be planning my wedding, and I did, I was also dealing with, for the first time, with lawyers, and lawyers don't write the nicest emails when you haven't hired them. And so I had everything that I feared come into question. And that my integrity was questioned, my capability, my smarts, everything, that all of those deep-seated, like, I'm not enough beliefs from childhood were totally brought into my face in a different form. And what that experience did for me was it put me into a year and a half where, when I was on my honeymoon, I had the idea for Crown Yourself. And because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get back. And so my husband and I were brainstorming, like you do on your honeymoon. And I came up with the idea for Crown Yourself. And I said, it's a holistic coaching. It's helping the body, it's helping the relationships, and it's helping businesses, because I'd had success in all of them. I'd overcome an eating disorder, a 10-year battle with an eating disorder with just reframing my mindset. I'd overcome abusive relationships and found the love of my life, my amazing husband. And I had been successful in business, but I hadn't been really fulfilled. And I think that was something that when I first started coaching, I was out of integrity, and I struggled with the business part as well, because I was like, I didn't feel like coaching a leader when I wasn't acting like a leader myself. I was scared. I was doubting myself. I had imposter syndrome. And so the beautiful part of that whole experience was that it allowed me a year and a half to wallow in the dungeon of doubt, to be stuck in what I call productive procrastination, where I was doing all the things. I hired a fancy web designer to build my website, not the one I have now. This one I have now is the one I built in the weekend. I paid a lot of money for my website and a graphic designer and all these fancy things to make my business look like a polished turd that was not making any money. And that allowed me to now have so much compassion and empathy when I have clients come to me who are making way less than they deserve to be making and have been working their ass off in their business, and they feel stuck and they still battle those imposter syndromes. I know what that's like to have been there. And so that experience of being bought out of my e-commerce company, I now look back on with such gratitude, because I look back and the values that my partner and I had were very different. Not that my values were good or his values were bad, or his values were good and my values were bad. They were just different. And that's one thing that a lot of business owners don't think about when they first start a business, because they're starting a business with passion and excitement, especially a product-based business of like, this is going to take off and there's all that fuel. And then when it doesn't, that's when it starts to hit your values. And my business partner and I had different values, and that's where we butted heads. And I look back on that experience, I'm like, I am so glad he set me free. I am so glad, because that allowed me to really define my own values, to find what the foundation that I wanted to set for my company of ownership and growth and curiosity and authenticity. And those values were just a little differently expressed, because I was sharing those values with my business partner, and I couldn't market myself as holistically as I wanted to market myself or market the product. And I couldn't use certain language because it wasn't part of the company culture that we were creating. And I didn't feel 100% aligned with that. And that experience allowed me to look back at like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that I was set free from that business so that I could really go on to create something that I'm so proud of.
Well, that's great. We do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we have kind of run out of time. Your website is, you want to give out your website?
Yeah, it's crownyourself.com.
Crownyourself.com. Okay.
Very simple.
And do you have a book that you're promoting?
I do. My book is coming out in the winter. So it is called Rule Your Body, Take Command of Your Health. And it really is. It's about all the strategies that I put into place to heal from a 10-year battle with bulimia with no psychological or medical intervention, and how I approach health. And I think while I've been coaching leaders for the past 4 years, one of the consistent things that I see is them building their legacy, building their impact at the expense of their body. And it's especially during this time with COVID, and because my father passed away in January, my obsession with how health supports us in every area of our life, true health. That is why I feel this book needs to be released, not just because of the times of COVID and the pandemic, but because I believe understanding how we can take command of our bodies. And by taking command of our bodies, we are able to take command of the rest of our lives. Like, this body is this beautiful vessel that moves us through into accomplishing what we want in our career and into being who we want in our relationships with our partners or our children. And so how do we really command our body to be an optimal performance and, undo some of the crappy programming that maybe I think a lot of us have, especially women have, around how we look and how we feel in our bodies. And so that is what I'm really excited to be releasing this winter. So definitely pop over to crownyourself.com. And if Communication Queens aligns with you, or you want to really take command of your health and your body, then definitely jump on over and get on the pre-sale list for my book.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was a nice conversation, a lot of information there. Best of luck with everything you're doing. Sounds like you've got your plate full.
Yeah, with 2 boys under 4 as well. So it is a full plate, but it is a heaping helping of delicious joy to be able to be firing on all cylinders and just to be able to make this impact. So thank you so much, Douglas, for having me on. It has been an honor talking with you.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to the Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Tabitha A. Scott. Hey, Tabitha, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Douglas?
Doing fine, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here. I love your show.
Oh, thank you very much. Let's see. You're an international author, speaker, and advisor on business transformation. I've had a lot of business coaches, life coaches, people with those sort of titles. Is that what you're doing?
I'm not doing life coaching. I would be closer to a business coach, but what I do is I have expertise in both electrical energy as well as human energy biofield studies. And so I know how people get into action. I know how we're affected by energy because we're made of energy, and quantum science proves that. And so I'm kind of a bridge between the spiritual folks that would talk about like energy healing and things, and the people that are talking about how to get productivity and innovation at work, how to use our energy and engage our employees. And so I actually work with businesses typically and talk about how to get the most energy out of your teams, out of your people, and have fun at work.
Is there a religious aspect to this at all?
It is totally not religious. You can be Buddhist or Baptist, but we're all energists. And what I mean by that is religions are made during certain periods of time to fit things that are going on and help people to connect to a major energy source. And most of the popular ones are monotheistic as well. And I see this as energy itself is that source. And we're all living things are made of energy. We go through the same growth cycles. And so it just reinforces different religions. It's not in conflict. It's just the science behind it.
Oh, I see. Okay. So the energy is out there. It's all around us. People have called it different things throughout time and history. And what you're doing is helping people sort of tap into it, to use it for their own personal benefit and to improve their life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to recognize it, like recently with the protests, with COVID, with everything going on, you heard words like, I feel disconnected, I feel off balance. And those things are because literally our energy is flowing from a high vibe balance, which is our normal state, into low vibe things like uncertainty and fear. And so our emotions and the way that we choose to react to things, so the activities that we choose to engage in and the things we're tuning into, literally help us have higher vibes, which are things like positivity, connectedness, or low vibe, which are those things like I feel disconnected or, low energy. And if you think about how much we use the language of energy throughout the way we speak, it's in all of our conversation. We're enlightened. And what do they use to show a big idea? A light bulb over somebody's head. So
that's true.
Throughout our conversation.
Yeah, there is a lot of reference to energy words and electricity, lighting. Yeah, exactly right. Give us an example of a company would hire you, right, to come in and speak to the employees. Is that correct?
They could. I actually work for a firm that does consumer insights, where you might be talking with people that would be buying a new product, for example, to get their opinions on things. And we work with ethnographers and anthropologists on that, and then do innovation and strategy. So that's sort of the day job, and the layer that goes between that is the purposeful transformation. And whether it's at work or anybody at home, your listeners, purposeful transformation is just about thinking about the things that make you feel those high vibe feelings, make you feel passionate or happy with a purpose, and doing more of them. And that's what you've seen, Douglas, in recent weeks with this mass exodus from the workplace, because people have been home and they've reevaluated what's important to them. And they're learning that without a purpose, without doing things that they love to do or are energized by, they're getting burnt out and quitting.
Well,
and so it's working with companies or working with people to figure out, well, this is why you're feeling burnout, and here's how to help.
Can you give us, I can't think of a better term, but sales pitch. Do you have a sales pitch for this that you would present to people who, because you don't know who you're dealing with. If you have a group of people, you don't know if they have any relationship to what you're talking about or not, right? So you have to kind of make it relevant to everybody.
Yeah, I would say the sales pitch is, have you been shoulding on yourself? And what I mean by that is, I should please my boss. I should be able to work harder. I should be fit. I should be attractive. And we end up putting all of these pressures on ourselves. And if you've ever felt that way, then my pitch is to stop shoulding on yourself. If you want to reduce your stress, if you want to become more positive, then let go of the negative energy, let go of things that drag you down and create low vibe emotions. Tap into or tune into the things that you love to do, and we can talk more about how to do that. And then to maintain and recharge, you have to take the risk to do the things that you want to do. So my pitch would be, if you want to stay in a positive state of mind, then, it doesn't have to be anything frou-frou. It's as simple as energy science and the law of physics. You have to let go of things holding you back. You got to tap into the things that make you happy or that are already moving forward, instead of, cause and effect going against each other. And then you have to take the risk. You got to get your momentum started.
Do you think people hang on to their fears as a comfort? I know that sounds a little odd, but it's not as easy as it sounds to just say, let go of your fears. when people have fears, it's sort of a protection mechanism for them. And if they keep their fear, then they don't have to really confront whatever it is. And I think that's very difficult for people to do, you know?
It is difficult for people to do, and you're absolutely right. In my book, Trust Your Animal Instincts, I write about those fears, and I call it the should monster. And the reason I gave it a name is because psychologists, whenever they're working with people that maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's abuse, but when there are cases that are difficult for them to face and fears, if they can name them something, give it a name, then it depersonifies it and it makes it more manageable and more bite-sized. And so that's a technique that we can use when dealing with our fears to let go of them, is say, you know what, that's not really disappointing my dad or my best friend or my boss. You know, that's the should monster. That's me putting pressure on myself, and figuring out what those pressures are that are unhealthy for us and the ones that are healthy. A healthy pressure might be going to the gym. You know, I don't love to go to the gym, but it's a healthy pressure to put on yourself versus, you know, I can't make mistakes. I can't take a day off. Those are unhealthy pressures.
One of the things that I've always been concerned with, particularly with the advent of the internet, are people that are, I don't know how to say this, but we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, right? And if somebody has unrealistic goals for themselves and they're constantly being disappointed because they're not achieving those goals, is there a point where people should maybe heed the advice of others and say, and get on a different road? I know it sounds like a strange question, but
no, it's not a strange question, and it makes sense. And it's the matter of teasing apart, is this, are they pressuring me or giving me advice for my benefit or my detriment? And that's the key question to be asking yourself. And the other piece of that question is, you know, we stress ourselves out way too much thinking about things like, what is my purpose? You know, like, that's pretty profound. And a lot of people will never know what their purpose is. And so I say, instead of going through cruise control on this life where you're just rushing to get somewhere to this invisible purpose or figure it out, just make a waypoint along the way. Just one little thing that makes you feel a little bit better. So for me, for example, that might be, I'm going to get in a hike this week. You know, that is something I'd love to do, and that's a waypoint. Or set a goal that you're going to do piano lessons once a month. Something that makes you happy and energized, and start integrating that in your everyday life. Maybe it's volunteering. You know, whatever it is, it will lead you towards your purpose. The more you do things that bring you joy, because it will raise your vibrations, and then you will be in sync with higher vibration people and things.
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate that a lot of people go through their entire life and never find what it is that brings them joy.
Yeah.
You know, that's sad.
It is. And there are so many different things you could try. You know, how can you not find any one thing that brings you joy? Just stop overthinking it. Does petting your cat bring you joy, or taking your dog for a walk, or, you know, watching something on television that's funny?
Yeah.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah. You've got a book out. Your book is called Trust Your Animal Instincts. You want to give us just a quick synopsis of your book?
Sure. The book uses the story of my life, of how it led up to burnout as a global executive. I grew up on a small farm in Kentucky, worked my way up to a global executive, did lots of work with renewable energy and sustainability. And at that time, over the last 17 years, people didn't care much about the environment in the part of the U.S. where I lived, in the Southeast. And so over many, many years, that kind of took its toll and led to burnout. Eventually got to a point in my career, and with, you know, things at home going on that I couldn't control. One of my children had an incurable disorder. I got a divorce after 21 years, empty nesting, like all these things happening that happened to many of us. And I just walked away from my job, gave away my things, went and lived in the Costa Rican jungle for almost 3 months with no cell phone service and no TV, no radio, and really disconnected. And I took what I knew about electrical energy and the energy healing work I had been studying for about a decade. And it really all came together that, wow, you don't have to go to the jungle. You don't have to quit your job. All you have to do is tap into this renewable source of energy within us. And by the way, back to those religions, that's what they're trying to explain, but they're explaining it through a social lens and through a time period lens of what was going on at the time versus just looking at the energy itself and saying, wow, we go through the same growth cycle as grass or water or animals or other people or even companies go through the same life cycle. And so realizing we're all stimulated by that same foundation of energy, and we have way more in common than we do different. So the book goes through that story, and then the last part of the book is very practical, and it has some worksheets of this is how to tell if a pressure is good or bad. This is, how to protect yourself and some techniques you can use, like putting up a shield or energetic judo to redirect energy around you.
I'm always happy to hear stories like that because it's very similar to mine. And it took me, I worked for 20 years in Boston in a corporate job, and I've been a lifelong musician, singer-songwriter. And I started out doing that when I was 18, but then things came along and I got off that road and went to work. And 20 years after working, I said, you know what, I've got to get back to it. So I did what you said. I sold the house. I moved all the way to Thailand, actually, for 3 years and taught English over there. And in a rural area, not in the major cities, but way out of the 300 miles north of Bangkok. And got back to my creative side, tapped into that right brain side. I wrote 25 songs in 3 years, and in the previous 20 years, I had written 2. So it was
but
all...
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it was like all blocked up in there, and I needed to just completely change everything to get the creative juices flowing again.
You redefine success. And I don't know about you, but when I was there and, like you, I was an hour and a half from paved roads. And yet the people each day, they would wash their kids' school uniforms, their white school uniforms, and I'm there in this dusty environment that doesn't rain for 5 months at a time. And yet with joy, they would hand wash them each day, get them to school the next day. And there was so much joy and happiness. And it really helped me redefine success. Has nothing to do with money. It's nice and it keeps a roof over our head, which does lower our stress. But you know what? It's success is what we make it to be. And like you, as a child, I grew up playing piano, Southern gospel. I would travel around to different little churches as a kid and played by ear. And been through the busyness of life. We didn't even have a piano in our home. And so after I got back from Costa Rica, I, bought a baby grand and have started playing again. So I feel you.
Well, it's funny about money, too, because on the one hand, it does buy choice, and it buys, levels of life comfort. But it also comes with its own built-in stresses that people who don't have money don't have those stresses. I've seen people who are multimillionaires who are the most stressed out people I've ever met. And their energy was so toxic that I had to get out of the room. It just, it's amazing to me. And yet people, like you said, the ones that washing the uniforms of the kids who probably don't have, $5 to come up with, seem to be these very happy, sort of carefree individuals. Their energy is just so much more positive. So I don't know. Money's a funny, tangible thing that can be good and bad, I suppose, depending on how you approach it. It
is, and it's interesting how this year I was I'm starting to work on this different theory of, since we're made of waves and vibrations, then perhaps the higher the wave in physics, your wave height will be offset by a trough of equal low point, right? And it made me think about, as I had several really crazy bad situations happen at the beginning of the year, and then had some really crazy great situations happen, and it occurred to me, I wonder if this is why people that, like you look at child stars, or people that are thrust into success all of a sudden, and then they go through this really low, dark period.
Yeah.
And so now I'm curious about waves. Is that the offset that's coming? And the faith that we have is that it has to go back up, because we're made of waves, and that's the law of physics. And so life will rebound. It will get better. So that's just something I'm kicking around. It's neither here nor there.
We do have to kind of wind this down. Do you have a website that you want to give out, either a personal one or a business one, or whatever you like?
Yeah, if people want to go to powering-potential.com, and again, that's powering with a hyphen and then potential.com. And there will be information about me. If you want to book me for one of your speaking engagements, I do a lot of keynotes, or there's information on the book there. And you can figure out how to keep your energy high and stay positive.
Okay, great. Are there links to your social media on that website as well?
It sure is. And if you Google Tabitha A. Scott, I'm on all the major social networks.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing. It was a nice conversation. Best of luck.
Thanks, Douglas.